My name is Rachel Monroe, and I'm 48 years old. If you had asked me a month ago what my life looked like, I would have told you it was steady. Not flashy, not a whirlwind romance, but steady, like a river that runs calmly year after year. For 12 years, I was with David Grant. We weren't married. He always said marriage was just a piece of paper, and honestly, I'd stopped arguing about it years ago. We had our routines: a townhouse with ivy creeping along the brick, Sunday brunches at our favorite cafe, vacations to the coast every summer. Comfort, stability. I thought we had built something unshakable, but comfort can also lull you into blindness. 3 weeks ago, David sat me down at our dining table. I'll never forget the look in his eyes. Serious, almost rehearsed, like he'd been practicing the speech in the mirror. He cleared his throat and said, "Rachel, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I feel like life is passing me by." At first, I thought he meant something simple, a midlife itch. Maybe he wanted to finally take that cooking class he'd mentioned or sign up for salsa lessons. But then he started name-dropping people: Melissa, his coworker, who had just returned from some overpriced spiritual retreat in Sedona; Jessica, his friend, who had thrown herself into salsa dancing with her new boyfriend, who was apparently 35 and so full of life. David's voice trembled as he said, "I need to experience things, Rachel. Real things. I've been living in a bubble for too long." I stared at him, stunned. "What bubble? You mean our relationship? Our life?" He nodded, almost relieved that I said it for him. "Yes, don't you feel it? We're just existing, going through the motions. I watch these TikToks of people living their truth and I think, what's my truth? I don't even know anymore." I couldn't help it. I almost laughed. TikToks. He was 46 years old, talking about TikToks like they were gospel. But I stayed calm. "David, if you want to try something new, we can. We could take that class together. Plan a different trip this year. Whatever you need. But don't throw everything away." His answer was a blade dressed in silk. "You don't get it. I need to do this alone. I need to find myself without this." He gestured around the living room as if our home was a prison cell. That's when it sank in. "So you're breaking up with me?" His voice softened, almost saintly. "I'm choosing myself, Rachel. For once in my life, I'm choosing myself." I could have begged. I could have pleaded with him to remember the 12 years, the countless nights we stayed up dreaming about our future, the sacrifices I made when he lost his job years ago and I carried us on my income. I could have fought for what we had, but something inside me snapped cleanly instead of breaking jagged. I looked at him and said simply, "Okay, when do you want to move out?" The shock on his face was almost comical. He blinked like he hadn't prepared for this line of dialogue. I was thinking by the end of the week." "Fine," I said. "I'll help you pack." And I did. The next few days blurred into cardboard boxes and bubble wrap. I folded his shirts, stacked his books, even taped up the box with his ridiculous collection of artisanal hot sauces he swore he'd use but never touched. I loaded his belongings into the U-Haul he rented while he gave me this look, half gratitude, half guilt. As he stood by the door, suitcase in hand, he said, "You're being so amazing about this, Rachel. We can still be friends, right? This doesn't have to be ugly." I forced a smile, though my chest was hollow. "Sure, David, go experience life. I hope you find what you're looking for." He hugged me. I didn't hug back, just patted his shoulder. Then he walked out. Just like that, 12 years packed away in the back of a truck. I stood there in the silence of our living room. The space looked strange, stripped of his things. For a moment, I expected myself to collapse, to sob into the couch cushions, to drown in loneliness. But instead, I breathed. Deep. For the first time in years, I felt like I could fill my lungs all the way. The truth was, I hadn't realized how much space he had taken up. Not just physically, but emotionally. His doubts, his complaints, his endless searching for more. They had weighed me down like invisible bricks. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat in what was once his favorite chair, and whispered into the quiet, "He'll regret this. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday." And I meant it. The week that followed was strange, like walking through a house I didn't quite recognize. I changed little things, turned his so-called craft room into my own home office, threw out the dusty candles he bought but never lit, opened all the windows, and let the air sweep through. For the first time in a long time, the place smelled like me. There was grief, yes, but it wasn't sharp. It was more like a dull ache, a phantom limb of a relationship I thought would always be there. Still, I slept better. I started making plans again, not with him in mind, but with me at the center. What I didn't know was that this was just the calm before the storm. People think when a breakup happens, it ends at the moment one person walks out the door. But the truth? That's when the story really begins. Because sometimes when you let someone go, they don't stay gone. Sometimes they come back, and when they do, they bring chaos with them. But in that first week alone, I didn't know that yet. I thought the chapter was closed. I thought I was free. I was wrong. The first Monday without David, I woke before the alarm. No snoring, no half-awake debate about who was making coffee. Just a pale sheet of morning light laying across the floorboards like silk. I showered with the bathroom door open, music playing from my phone, old R&B songs I loved that he always called sleepy. I sang anyway, off-key and unashamed. By noon, I had signed up for the gym membership I'd been putting off for a year. The trainer, a woman with bright eyes and the gentlest way of saying one more, wrote me a plan on a whiteboard like my future could be sketched in bullet points. 3 strength days, 2 stretches, a promise to drink water. I nodded like a soldier receiving orders. That night, I deep cleaned the townhouse. Not an angry purge, just reclaiming. I pulled the couch away from the wall, found an old movie ticket, a pen cap, and enough dust to knit a sweater. I scrubbed the baseboards. I took his aging novelty coffee mugs and tucked them into a box for donation. In the small room he once called his craft space, I assembled a beautiful, solid wood desk I'd been eyeing online for months. The room transformed under warm lamplight. Not a hobby closet anymore, but a place where ideas could stretch their legs. By Wednesday, I'd reconnected with people I hadn't seen because couplehood can quietly steal your weekends. Poker with friends on Friday. A Saturday morning walk through the farmer's market. Lunch with Nia, who hugged me a second too long and whispered, "You deserve someone who knows how lucky he is." I didn't disagree. I just wasn't ready to talk about someone yet. Strangest of all, I slept like a stone. 8 hours, sometimes 9. The kind of sleep you get when your nervous system stops expecting the next debate, the next sigh, the next critique disguised as curiosity. Do you ever feel like you're playing small, Rach? That line had carved grooves in my memory, and every night I didn't hear it, the grooves softened. There was grief. Of course there was. 12 years isn't a sweater you toss in a bin. It's a weather system that moves through you. But my grief arrived like a fog over water, quiet and gone by noon. In its place, clear air. On the 6th day, I stood in the kitchen, squeezing lemons over a cutting board for a vinaigrette, and felt something I couldn't name. It was like a key, turning in a lock I didn't know was there. Space. I had space. That's the thing about freedom. You don't understand its size until you step inside it. On the 7th day, at 7 a.m. sharp, my doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the quiet. 3 sharp chimes. I glanced at the clock on the stove. A spoon clinked in the sink. My heart kicked. A very specific, very old dread woke up in my chest, the one that anticipates a mess you'll be expected to clean. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the door. I knew before I opened it. Some part of me had known since the house first felt peaceful. The world hates a vacuum. And people who leap without a map eventually circle back to the last place they felt held. I unlatched the chain and pulled the door open. There he was, David. Hair unwashed, last week's stubble, eyes exhausted. He wore an old hoodie and the same gray joggers he left in. 2 suitcases, one upright, one slumped. His shoulders were squared, like a man ready to negotiate the price of a car he couldn't afford. "Rachel," he said, breath fogging in the morning cool, "we need to talk." I moved only as much as politeness demanded. "About what?" "Can I come in, please?" I checked the time on my phone. I have a work call in 20 minutes. You've got 15. He dragged his suitcases across the threshold like he owned the threshold, parked them in the foyer with a thud that made my picture frames tremble. He didn't even look up. Interesting, the muscle memory of entitlement. Living with Jessica isn't working out, he began, voice already slipping into complaint. Her boyfriend's always there. They're loud. His cologne's everywhere. The couch is killing my back, and... Why are you telling me this? I asked. Calm. Too calm, maybe. It shocked him. I saw it. He leveled me with a look like I was missing the obvious. Because I'm coming home. There it was. Flat, inevitable, like gravity. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not cruelly, just surprised. Home? Yes, he said, gesturing around, claiming air. I experienced what I needed to experience, okay? I know what I want now. And what's that? I asked. This, he said, as if revealing a truth he'd hunted through deserts to find. My life back. I took him in, the dissonance of his words, the smell of too many days, lived out of a duffel, the faint tang of someone else's cologne ghosting his sleeve. I thought of my desk lamp upstairs, the soft pool of light it made at night. I thought of how easily I breathed this week. I thought of lemon on my fingers, and clean baseboards, and the way music sounded traveling down my hallway. You left your life, I said gently. You called it a bubble, a prison, remember? He flushed, resentment rising. It was a mistake. You know me. I panic when things feel stagnant. I needed perspective, I nodded. And you got it. He stepped toward me. We're adults. We can work through this. No, I said. We can't. It's been 11 days, Rachel. He let out a humorless breath. 11. And they've been good, I said simply. His mouth opened, closed. He reached for charm, that old, reliable tool. I've already thought about Sundays, you know. We can try that new brunch spot near the river, and I'll sign up for that cooking class. David? I raised a hand. Please stop. A beat. The charm calcified into anger. Fine. If that's how it is, we need to talk about my half of everything. I blinked. Your half? The house, the furniture, everything I'm entitled to after 12 years. I felt the temperature in the room drop. Not fear, but clarity. The house is in my name. I bought it before we met. You didn't want your name on anything because you said ownership was too permanent. The furniture? You took what was yours. The rest, I purchased. You lived here rent-free for over a decade. He flinched. I contributed. I bought groceries. I decorated. And I carried us when you lost your job, I said, voice still even. I covered the mortgage. Twice I canceled vacations so we could cover your late car payments. We're more than even. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. In his mind, I realized I'd always be the soft place to land. He'd assumed I'd fold, apologize, negotiate the terms of my own undoing. Something in his face twisted. You're financially abusing me, he snapped, as if the words could conjure truth. I will tell everyone what a monster you are. Jessica's boyfriend knows a lawyer. I'll make you pay. I considered the clock over his shoulder. 8 minutes to my work call. David, you need to leave. You can't just... This is my home, I said, gentler than he deserved. You chose yourself, remember? Go do that somewhere else. The look he gave me then, wounded pride, curdling into rage, wasn't new. I'd seen it when he didn't get the promotion he hadn't earned. I'd seen it when a waiter brought the wrong salad and he made it a thesis on customer service. It said, "How dare the world not rearrange itself for me?" He grabbed his suitcases, plastic wheels squeaking, and shouldered past me. At the door he paused, turning back like a bad actor reaching for his final devastating line. "You'll regret this," he said. "When you're old and alone, you'll wish you'd taken me back." There are sentences that used to shatter me. That one used to, not anymore. I doubt it, I said. Take care, David. He shoved through the door and was gone, thunder without rain. The hallway fell quiet. I closed the door and put my palm against the wood, steadying myself, not against sadness, but against adrenaline. My reflection in the console mirror looked like a woman who had finally stopped arguing with reality. I went to the kitchen, poured water, and sat on the stool by the window. My hands shook, then stilled. The lemon scent lingered on my skin. Outside, a neighbor walked her dog, its leash a bright ribbon in the morning light. Ordinary life, right on time. 2 hours later, my phone began to buzz. First a call from a number I didn't recognize, then another. Then a string of messages lighting up like fireworks. I didn't check them right away. I finished my work call, sent 2 emails, and watered the plant on my desk that I kept forgetting to name. Only then did I pick up my phone. The screen was a storm. From an unknown number, "You heartless woman. How could you abandon him when he's vulnerable?" From Nicole, his sister I'd always gotten along with, the one with 3 kids and endless patience. "Please just talk to him. He's not himself. You're throwing away the best thing that ever happened to you." From Melissa, the spiritual retreat evangelist. "You're stifling David's growth. He deserves compassion while he evolves." I exhaled through my nose. Here it was, the war before the war. People who hadn't lived inside our home telling me what my home should be. I typed nothing. Not yet. There's a trick to storms. You let the first squall pass before you decide whether to open a window. What I didn't know, what none of them knew, was that by noon the next day, David would be in the lobby of my office building, proclaiming himself my common-law husband to the security guard, while my coworkers watched from behind potted plants, thrilled and horrified. But that's tomorrow's mess. For now, I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet hum of my house. The air was still mine, my days were still mine, and I remembered a sentence I'd whispered once, to nobody but myself. He'll regret this. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow, but someday. When people leave to search for themselves, they imagine a horizon of infinite possibilities. What they rarely imagine is the boomerang. That radical freedom without a plan can spin you in a circle and hit you in the back of the head. Then you stumble to your feet and look around for the last person who loved you on purpose. My door was closed. My life, finally, was open. The next morning, my office lobby looked like a stage, and David had cast himself as the star. I walked in, latte in hand, already bracing for the day's meetings. But there he was, standing in the middle of the marble floor, gesturing wildly, voice raised loud enough to bounce off the glass walls. The security guard stood awkwardly nearby, caught between duty and disbelief. My coworkers peeked from behind potted plants, phones half raised, hungry for gossip. "She can't just throw me out after 12 years, David shouted, eyes bright with performance. "We're common law married. She owes me support. This building will hear the truth." The words sliced through the air, absurd and humiliating. My heart pounded, not because I feared him, but because reputation is fragile, and he was wielding mine like a weapon. I approached slowly, every heel click echoing like a drumbeat. "David," I said evenly, "you need to leave." He spun toward me, theatrical. "Leave? Rachel? After everything we built, after all my sacrifices, you want to erase me like I never existed?" A murmur rippled through the onlookers. I caught my coworker Mark's wide eyes. He mouthed, "What is happening?" I gave the smallest shake of my head. "Later." "David," I repeated, tone clipped. "You are not my husband. We are not married. And this is not the place." Security finally found his authority. "Sir, you'll need to exit the building." David scoffed, but he dragged his suitcase toward the door, muttering about injustice and betrayal. As he passed me, he hissed, "You'll regret humiliating me." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. His humiliation was his own invention. By the time I sat at my desk, my phone was buzzing like an angry hive. Texts, voicemails, missed calls, and each one carried the same poisonous theme. I was the villain. First, his mother, Gladys, a woman who once hugged me on Christmas morning, calling me the daughter she never had. Now her voice on voicemail cracked like a whip. "Rachel, how could you abandon David like this? He gave you the best years of his life, and you throw him out when he's vulnerable? Heartless. Absolutely heartless." Then his sister Nicole, the one juggling 3 kids under 10, the one I used to babysit for when she needed a break. Her text lit my screen. Please, Rach, don't do this. He's lost. You're throwing away the best man you'll ever have. He just needs time. Talk to him. I'm begging you. And then Melissa. Always Melissa. The woman who planted the seeds of David's crisis with her endless retreats and alignment journeys. Her voicemail oozed judgment wrapped in faux empathy. Rachel, this is about spiritual growth. You're blocking David's evolution. You should be proud of him for seeking truth. Don't cage him in bitterness. Let him rise. I listened, jaw tight. My eyes burned, but not from tears. Anger, hot and steady, threatened to spill. Because none of these people had sat with me in the quiet nights, listening to his sighs of dissatisfaction. None of them had covered bills when his soul-searching meant quitting yet another job. None of them had heard him call our life a bubble, a prison. Yet somehow, I was the executioner. That evening, I sat on my couch, phone face down, wine glass untouched. My house hummed with silence, but the silence was no longer peaceful. It was charged, a storm pressing against the windows. I thought of calling Nia, of spilling the whole saga, but something in me resisted. A voice whispered, "Don't defend yourself yet. Let the truth breathe." Still, the loneliness crept in. The idea that maybe the narrative out there, Rachel, the cold-hearted woman who abandoned her partner in crisis, would grow roots. Maybe people would believe him. Maybe his chaos would become my cage. I stood, restless, and began pacing. My reflection in the hallway mirror stopped me cold. My own eyes looked back, tired, yes, but also sharp, alive. This wasn't weakness. It was clarity. When a breakup turns into war, I whispered to the mirror, the battlefield is your reputation. And David had just declared war. The next day proved it. At lunch, a coworker leaned across the table, lowering her voice like she was trading secrets. "Rachel, I heard David came by yesterday. Are you okay? He was saying you financially abused him, that you—" I cut her off with a raised hand. "He's lying, but thank you for asking." Her cheeks flushed. "Of course, I didn't believe him. People talk, you know?" Yes, people talk. And David was feeding them stories. That night, Nicole called again, this time frazzled, kids yelling in the background. "Please, Rach, just take him back for a while. He's staying here and it's chaos. He complains about the noise, says the kids ruin his meditation. He even told me to make them eat dinner in their rooms so he could have adult conversation. I can't handle it. You know how he is. You've handled him before." Her words hit me like cold water. You've handled him before. That's what they thought I was, a handler, a keeper of David's storms. I inhaled slowly. "Nicole, I'm sorry, but I'm not his safety net anymore. You need to set your own boundaries." She sighed, defeated, before hanging up. By the end of that week, my phone was quieter. Not silent. David was still out there, spinning, but quieter. The first squall had passed. But I knew him. I knew the pattern. This wasn't surrender. This was escalation. Because David wasn't the type to fade quietly into the night. He was the type to burn every bridge and then scream about being stranded. And I had a sinking feeling his next move would make today's drama look like rehearsal. If David had a talent, it wasn't woodworking or cooking or even holding down a steady job. His real gift was escalation. He couldn't stand to lose quietly. By day 3, my inbox looked like a battlefield. I had been signed up, against my will, for every life insurance quote site known to mankind. Dozens of, "We've been trying to reach you about your life insurance needs" calls poured in, emails choking my spam filter. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Then I recognized the pattern. Petty, childish, exactly his brand of revenge. I sat at my desk, deleting messages in bulk, and muttered, "This is how you spend your time, David? Harassing me with telemarketers?" My own laughter startled me, not amused laughter, sharp, bitter. But that was just the beginning. The next day, someone sent me a link, a GoFundMe. The title, "Help a Woman Rebuild After Financial Abuse." And there, in the grainy photo, was David, looking pitiful in a hoodie, holding a mug of instant coffee like it was a prop in a tragedy. The description was worse. After 12 years of dedication, I was abandoned by my partner with nothing. She controlled all the money, left me homeless, and now I need support to start fresh. Please help me escape this cycle of abuse. My blood ran cold, then boiled. He had rewritten our entire life, erasing my sacrifices, painting himself as the victim. The donations? $47. 40 of it from his mother, Gladys. The other 7, anonymous. Probably himself. I sat there staring at the page, caught between rage and dark amusement. My first instinct was to expose him, to comment, to dismantle the lies in public. But then I thought, no, let it breathe. The truth always bubbles up. Lies rot under their own weight. Still, the humiliation gnawed at me. By day 4, karma arrived. Jessica, the friend whose couch he'd been staying on, called me. She never calls. Her voice was sharp, clipped. Rachel, I'm sending you something. Screenshots. You need to see this. A minute later, my phone pinged, and there they were, texts from David to Jessica's boyfriend. Ryan, you understand me in a way Rachel never did. Age is just a number when souls align. The universe brought us together for a reason. Ryan is 35, the same age David had mocked when Jessica first mentioned her new boyfriend. I scrolled, disgust curdling into something that almost felt like satisfaction. He wasn't just spiraling, he was digging, deep. Jessica's next text came fast. He's out. I kicked him out this morning. He's your problem now. I exhaled, leaning back against the couch. No, Jessica, I whispered. He's not my problem anymore. But Nicole wasn't so lucky. Later that night, she called again. The sound of her children screaming in the background, her voice tight with exhaustion. Rachel, I can't do this. He's impossible. Complains the kids are too loud for his meditation practice. Tries to rearrange the furniture for better energy flow. And told me sugar blocks spiritual growth and threw out half the Halloween candy. And now he wants me to cook separate meals so he can have adult dinners. I can't breathe in my own home. Her words cracked under the weight of desperation. I closed my eyes, pressing fingers to my temple. Nicole, I told you. I can't take him back. You need to tell him no. I tried, she said, voice breaking. But he manipulates. You know how he is. He makes me feel like I'm failing him if I set boundaries. I felt a pang, because I did know. For 12 years, I knew. But I also knew the trap. Handle him for me. That's what everyone wanted. That's what I'd been for over a decade. The handler, the buffer. The one who absorbed his chaos so others didn't have to. No, Nicole, I said firmly. Not this time. Her silence said everything. Disappointment, desperation, but beneath it, maybe a seed of realization. By day 5, the extinction burst hit. That's what my therapist once called it, the final tantrum before someone realizes their tricks no longer work. I woke to find myself tagged on social media posts, memes about cold women who abandon good men, quotes about loyalty, about how real love stays through storms. I scrolled through the comments, half strangers, half friends of friends who knew nothing of the truth, and in between the noise, one message stood out. Rachel, you don't need to explain yourself to anyone. People who know you know the truth. It was from Andrea, a woman from my basketball league, the same woman David would later try to weaponize against me. But in that moment, her words steadied me, because she was right. The people who mattered knew. And the rest? They were background noise. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. David was unraveling publicly, yes, but unraveling people often get desperate. And desperate people make dangerous moves. That evening, I found myself pacing the kitchen, glass of wine untouched. My mind replayed the last week like a montage. The office scene, the calls, the GoFundMe, Jessica's screenshots. It was grotesque, almost absurd. But the absurdity didn't erase the truth. My life had become his stage. Every petty act, every lie, every humiliation, it was all meant to drag me back into orbit. I stared out the window at the street below, empty under the streetlights, For the first time, a flicker of fear joined the anger. What will he do next? When I finally crawled into bed, I whispered the thought into the dark. He's not finished. He'll escalate again. And I was right, because day 6 would bring the biggest farce yet, an official lawsuit. But the lawyer wasn't really a lawyer. Day 6. I was in my kitchen, steeping tea, when the knock came. Not frantic, not aggressive, measured, like someone trying too hard to appear professional. I peeked through the peephole. A man in an oversized suit stood there, shuffling papers against a clipboard. I opened the door slowly. Yes? He cleared his throat. Couldn't have been more than 28, face pale as printer paper. Are you Rachel Monroe? Yes. He straightened, voice cracking with forced authority. I'm here on behalf of my client, David Grant. This is a legal notice. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. The suit still had the department store tag poking from the collar. Come in, I said coolly, stepping aside. He blinked in surprise, probably expecting me to slam the door. His nerves betrayed him. Sweat bloomed at his temples. I led him to the living room, gesturing to the couch. Please, have a seat. Tea? He swallowed. Sure. Minutes later, he sat with his knees glued together, clutching the papers like a lifeline, while I placed a steaming mug on the table between us. So, I said, folding my hands, walk me through this lawsuit. He nodded vigorously, pulling a sheet from the stack. The letterhead was plain printer paper, Times New Roman. Not a firm's logo in sight. David is entitled to cohabitation support, $2,000 a month, retroactive for 6 years, half the value of this home, plus $50,000 in emotional damages. I sipped my tea. Emotional damages? Yes, he squeaked. He suffered greatly. Interesting. I set the cup down. And you are? Douglas, he said quickly. Paralegal. He added the last word like it was a badge of honor. I leaned forward, voice steady. Douglas, did you research any of this before you came here? He blinked. Well, David, did he tell you the house is in my name alone? That I bought it before we met? Did he mention he refused to be added to the deed because ownership felt too permanent? Douglas shifted, papers rustling. He didn't specify. Did he tell you he never paid rent? Never contributed to the mortgage? That he explicitly said he didn't want financial entanglement? A flicker of doubt crossed his face. He said it was mutual. I reached for my phone, scrolled, and handed it to him. On the screen, a text from David, dated the day he left. This life is a soul-sucking suburban nightmare. I need to spread my wings and fly away from mediocrity. Douglas read it, lips moving silently. His ears turned red. I let the silence sit heavy between us. Finally, I said, You're being used, Douglas. You're not here as a legal representative. You're here as a pawn. His hands trembled. I just wanted experience. He said it would be simple, that you'd fold. He underestimated me, I said softly. Douglas stood abruptly, fumbling the papers back into his folder. I should go. Douglas, I called as he reached the door. He turned, shoulders hunched. You seem like a decent kid. Don't let people like David make you their weapon. He'll drain you, then discard you. Trust me, I know. For a moment, something like shame flickered in his eyes. Then he nodded and fled, leaving the scent of cheap cologne and fear trailing behind him. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Nicole again. I let it go to voicemail, then listened while folding laundry. Her voice was strained. Rachel, I can't do this anymore. He told my husband he's wasting his life in HVAC, that he should be a life coach instead, rearranged our living room for energy flow, lit sage at 5 a.m., and set off the smoke alarm. And now, God, Rachel, he threw away the kids' Halloween candy, said processed sugar blocks spiritual growth. They're sobbing. I'm done. You were right. He's lost it. A pause. A sigh heavy enough to bend steel. I'm sorry I called you heartless. I see it now. He's not a victim. He's toxic. Please forgive me. I closed my eyes. The weight slid off my chest. Vindication, not bitter, but clean. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and sank into my armchair, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I thought of Douglas, the way he looked, pale and shaken, clutching papers that meant nothing. I thought of Nicole, her voice cracking as she admitted what I'd known for years. And I thought of David, bouncing from couch to couch, burning every bridge he crossed. It was grotesque, tragic, and strangely comedic. But more than anything, it was done. At least that's what I told myself. But I knew David, and David never stopped at surrender. He always had one more move. And when I saw him at the grocery store days later, rumpled, broke, clutching instant noodles like treasure, I realized his story wasn't just ending. It was collapsing. The difference? This time, I wasn't inside it. I was watching from a distance. By day 10, David had run out of couches to crash on. Retreat friends? Gone. Jessica? Done. Nicole? Absolutely finished. Every place he touched became chaos. And when chaos comes knocking too many times, even the kindest doors slam shut. I didn't expect to see him again, but life loves a stage, and fate set ours in the fluorescent aisles of the local grocery store. It was Tuesday evening. I was strolling past the produce, basket half full, fresh herbs, ripe tomatoes, olive oil, a bottle of wine for later. Normal things for a normal life. And then I saw him. David stood at the far end of the aisle, slouched like a man who'd been fighting gravity for days. His hoodie was wrinkled, his joggers stained at the knee. His cart carried only a handful of items: instant noodles, generic coffee, and a dented can of beans. He looked older, somehow, though it had only been 2 weeks. His eyes caught mine, wide, startled, and for a heartbeat, I almost didn't recognize him. He froze, then forced a smile. Rachel. His voice cracked. I stopped mid-step, gripping the handle of my basket. My pulse quickened, but not from longing, not from fear, from clarity. This was the man who had burned my peace, who had begged for freedom only to drown in it. "How's the life experience going?" I asked evenly, tilting my head toward his sad cart. His face twitched. "You don't need to be cruel." "I'm not." My voice was calm, almost gentle. "I'm asking." He looked down at his shoes, words tumbling out in fragments. "It's not what I thought. Melissa exaggerated. Jessica betrayed me. Nicole, she doesn't understand me. Nobody does." There it was again, the same refrain, the eternal chorus. Everyone else's fault, never his. I let the silence stretch. He fumbled for another card to play. "Maybe we could start over?" "I've changed. I see things clearly now." I shook my head. "No, David, you don't see clearly. You just see consequences." His lips parted, searching for a retort, but none came. For once, there was no performance, no script. Just a tired man in a grocery aisle, staring at the woman who no longer carried his storms. I adjusted my basket on my arm. "I hope you find what you're looking for." And with that, I walked away before he could rehearse another plea. My steps were steady, my chest light. That night, as I cooked dinner, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. "This is Gladys," the voice said. David's mother, her tone, surprisingly soft. "He's staying with me now. I made him get a job at Target. He starts Monday." A pause, then quieter. "Thank you for not taking him back. He needed this wake-up call, and I'm sorry for calling you a heartless woman. I see now I was wrong." For a moment, I said nothing, because what could I say? The apology I never expected had just arrived, not from David, but from the woman who had once defended him fiercely. "Thank you, Gladys," I finally said. "That means more than you know." Weeks passed, and life, real life, my life, blossomed. I lost 15 pounds at the gym without even noticing, strength carving itself into my arms. I finished my first woodworking project in the little office I had claimed, a cutting board, crooked, but mine. Poker nights with friends became a ritual, laughter spilling into the early hours. And Daniel, a former colleague who reached out after hearing about my breakup, became an unexpected new presence. Our first dinner was easy, the kind where conversation flows without effort. He didn't talk about finding himself or chasing illusions. He talked about books he loved, the joy of cooking for friends, and how he once cried from happiness at a Bruce Springsteen concert. Solid, grounded, real. David, meanwhile, he became whispers in town. People mentioned his GoFundMe failure, his couch surfing antics, his meltdown at my office. He faded into the background noise of gossip, just another man humbled by his own undoing. Sometimes I'd scroll past his TikTok account, videos of him speaking solemnly to the camera about starting over at 46 and when the universe tests you. Fewer than 50 followers. Comments turned off after people mocked the irony, and every time I'd close the app, smile to myself, and carry on. Here's the thing I've learned. When someone tells you they don't want to be tied down, untie them completely. Don't hold the rope, waiting for them to circle back. Don't keep the light on, hoping they'll find their way home. Because if they leave searching for freedom without a plan, they won't find adventure. They'll find chaos, and they'll want to drag you into it with them. But you don't have to go. You can stay, build, rest, live. David once told me choosing himself was the bravest thing he'd ever done, but I see it differently now. The bravest thing I ever did was let him, and then quietly choose me.